Hello, everyone, and welcome to this marketing campaign webinar about how you can streamline your marketing campaign reviews with ease. My name is Sasha. I am a workflow consultant here at Filestage, helping companies to streamline their campaign approval processes and eliminating their feedback chaos. Today, in this webinar, it is all about identifying the challenges that slow you down in your campaign process right now and offering concrete tips and tricks that you can immediately use after this webinar to speed up your campaign approval right now. Now let's have a look together in detail at what we are going to look. As mentioned before, first of all, I will give you some insights about the three biggest challenges that surround marketing campaigns, how they affect your work, what is the root cause for them. From there on, we will immediately transition into the tips and tricks that you can then use after this webinar in your everyday working life. And after that, I will give you some real life examples from customers that have successfully transformed their campaign approvals. We look at their workflows from big brands and small businesses as well. At the end of this webinar, I will give you some food for your thought process. When could be the right time to invest into a review and approval solution to help streamlining your processes? All right, let's jump into the first topic, which is the three biggest challenges that surround your marketing campaigns. A little drum roll. Interesting buzzwords that you can see, right? It's inconsistency, loss of time, and waste of resources. We will analyze them all in a few, but for the next seconds, I would just kick off a little thought process in your mind. Think about one of your last projects where you felt that you have lost time because of waiting for feedback, or you got under pressure because the deadline came closer and stakeholder feedback was still missing, or in the end, the campaign was already published and you had the feeling could have been better. This thought process will help you to connect my analysis with your business and make it less abstract. All right, let's have a look at the first challenge, which is inconsistency. Here's that. Still 9 out of 10 companies have inconsistent campaign review processes. And I show you why. On this slide, what you can see, this is basically a typical project timeline of a creative campaign. At the beginning, there's the project planning. And you probably have a tool or some help to really get organized in the starting point. Whether it's a kick-ass Excel file or a project management tool, you already know what's the deadline, what are the milestones, and what content do you need to publish. Based on your business and on your campaign, you then either outsource the creative content production to an external partner, or if you have the resources, you do it also in-house, right? But the point here is that you know where to produce the content and what you need for it. On the right slide, what you can see also is that you are pretty much sure in the beginning where you're going to publish your content. You know if it's a piece for social media, if it's a print campaign, or if it's a TV commercial, and where you need to publish it. Where the inconsistency starts is the part between the content production and distribution. And remember my sentence from the beginning of this slide. Still 9 out of 10 companies have the problem with no proper process in place. So you are definitely not alone out there. Why inconsistency? And what does inconsistency mean? As you can see that you're pretty structured on all areas on the project, but when it comes to reviewing assets, getting feedback, inviting people to leave feedback, you have no proper process in place that helps you with all the challenges of getting too many emails, having meetings that needs to be arranged. And what this does is it basically ties your personal time into organizing the feedback process, which immediately transitions into the second challenge, which is the loss of time, or more precisely speaking, the time that is being lost during the campaign approval. And here's the main reason for it. In our current report that asks more than 350 marketers advertising professionals, and account managers about the state of creative collaboration. 9 in 10 account managers and more than 7 in 10 marketers said that waiting for approval and chasing people for approval is the biggest pain, no matter what company size they have. And as you can see here, that waiting for feedback is a natural thing, right? You create a piece of content and then you share it and you wait for feedback. Where the problem starts is as soon as you need to get feedback from many different stakeholders, you are immediately starting to watch your inbox when a new feedback drops in, because you already know the pain that happens afterwards if you forget to consolidate feedback, or you're losing the overview who already has given feedback, right? So your time is tied up into administrative tasks organizing the feedback process instead of using the time for other tasks that you are actually hired for. You are a creative mind, you are a marketer, and you are not hired to manage the feedback process. But instead of doing your core work, you are managing the feedback process because there is no proper process in place. And this results in the last challenge, which is our third biggest challenge surrounding marketing campaigns, the waste of resources. And here's the thing. The report about the state of creative collaboration revealed that on average, marketers spend 8 days to get a piece of content approved. Now, what does waste of resources mean? First of all, on this slide, you can see all the different things that are the core actions account managers and marketers do during the campaign approval. Arranging meetings to discuss misaligned feedbacks, taking screenshots and writing notes for video content, sending feedback via email, sending feedback on a phone call. So somebody needs to consolidate it, right? So all this add up. And in terms of wasted resources, what I mean here is when you want to create a creative campaign, the creative idea and the development of the campaign is the core piece of it. Now, as you probably know, nowadays, the time from project planning till publish is rather short, especially in social media, for example, and there is not much time to create an idea and get it published. But with no proper process in place for the review part, you have even less time for create good ideas that makes you happy when you see your own product out there in the internet world, right? So here is the thing. Less time for creating a creative campaign because you need to already take the time into consideration when your stakeholders need to give feedback. So you are basically blocking yourself in creating great campaigns. The second biggest part on wasting resources is think about all the stakeholders that needs to give feedback in your campaign approvals. If you are a small brand, you probably have your customers. But if you are working on more complex projects, what we usually hear in consumer goods, in medical devices, but in many, many others as well, it's not only you or a brand manager that needs to give feedback. It's also legal, it's regulatory, it's the management, you name them. And every time your stakeholders give feedback during this process, their time is tied into the review process, what they can't use for their core activities. And if there's no proper process in place, the time they spend on reviewing the content is even more. So from a company perspective, in regards to the business growth or developing a great brand, this is definitely a negative impact on the overall strategy. After you have seen these 3 challenges, I'm sure that you agree that at some situations in your work, you might have discovered similar situations, right? Otherwise, probably you wouldn't take part on this webinar. Now, the reasons for the existence of these challenges are manifold. But in a nutshell, it is because of the habit that has been developed over time. Because things have always been like that, right? You probably have some colleagues in your company that sometimes say, I don't need a new process. I have done it years already and it has worked. Yeah, it has worked, but it could have been better, right? The habit that I mean is people are used to use email for sending feedback. People are used to have a video call now, especially after COVID, to give feedback on misaligned feedbacks and many other ways. So the root cause for inefficient processes is the lack of knowledge how to close the gap between the content production and the delivery. To give you a bit of a more visuality, how this basically looks like. So when we talk about the gap between content production and distribution, this is visually the process, how it looks like on this slide. So you can see on the left top, you are creating the campaign assets. Once the campaign assets are created, you basically share the content with your reviewers. You share it via link, via email, you send attachments maybe in Microsoft Teams, and then the content gets reviewed. But since you have a video file, you have a PDF, maybe you have an image as well, people probably open the content on many different ways. And if they then give feedback, in the end, discussing this feedback and getting a consensus on some feedback, this is definitely taking so much time that, as I said, on average, as you can see on the down middle of this slide, it takes up to 8 days. Why? Because you need to make the changes and then the round goes again and probably goes again. Without a proper process in place, you might have more versions than you would actually need. Now, coming from this, as I said, what we need to make sure that you are able to build efficient campaign workflows tailored to your company's needs. So you will be able in the end to spend less time reviewing and approving content. Also, the time you are spending to manage feedback is radically reduced as you can follow up with other tasks while there is a process in place, reminding people that something still needs to be done, and the fear you have of missing some notifications or an email is eliminated. This will make you faster, you will have less versions, and in the end, you will be more productive. And think about your own motivation at work. What kills your motivation is doing administrative tasks that are repetitive. And if it kills your motivation, it kills productivity. And this is a real risk also for the errors that just sometimes slip through. All right, now let's get it done and go into details what you can basically do to build successful approval workflows. I have presented 5 tips that will help you after this webinar to immediately kick off your new way of streamlined approval processes. Tip number 1, you need to have a clear workflow. Think about what all efficient workflows have in common. Basically, they have 3 characteristics. The first one is a workflow needs to be logical. Workflows will help your team to streamline and automate repetitive tasks, right? It's minimizing the room for errors and it is increasing the overall efficiency. For this reason, it is important to make sure your workflows are logical and easy to understand for everyone. Also, your workflows needs to be visible. To make sure that your workflows are visible, you need to introduce in the best way a workflow for a certain campaign or for a certain part of your work in the onboarding of new team members. So when you have somebody joining the company, they need to understand from the very beginning how workflows are built and where to find them. Also, you should make sure that you have a unique channel to share updates on workflows. Internal email for communicating internally should be forbidden. So be aware of that your workflow also contains a part of how people can communicate on each other. Last but not least, your workflow also needs to be iterative because sometimes workflows need to change. There are business factors during the week that might influence your work. Maybe you're introducing a new tool to discover new ways to increase efficiency or something else. So you need to be able to adjust proactively your workflows, and everybody then is aware of the updates and, as I said, has a visual place where to go to. Tip number 2, You should definitely, before doing anything on your workflows, define your stakeholders and note them down. It's an age-old tale and something we hear at Filestage very, very often. You are close to publish your content. You have the approval from many stakeholders, and you are about to hand over the final content to your external partner. And right before the finish line, somebody else comes in, gives you a slide tackle, and you need to redo the version because you missed feedback from somebody that was important. And the overall process needs to start again. What we also hear sometimes is that the content might be already published, but then somebody found out he or she wasn't involved in the process. So you need to take off the campaign, rework it, and put it up live again. And this is fatal and a horror scenario for everyone working in marketing, right? Now, different projects require different stakeholders to be involved in the campaign approval process. You need to make sure that you know exactly who is involved in which project and what's the workflow I basically need. Write it down. For example, in a Kanban style, so you have the stakeholders already visible with kind of a workflow in front of you. And if you don't have a workflow sheet yet, create one for every possible process and make it accessible for everyone in the company. What you can see on the slide here is a template from Filestage. So after this webinar, if you're interested in this template, we can hand it out for you so you can start managing your stakeholders better than before. Tip number 3, you need to give your reviewers a transparent way how to share feedback and finally say goodbye to reviewing content over email. When you review content via email, there will be inevitably multiple chains of emails, crosswires, conflicting recommendations, or worst case, somebody uses your email thread to start another discussion and everybody's jumping on it and you're sitting there and saying like, hey, let's talk about my feedback here. Yeah. In this way, a review and approval tool can really help you to get one central hub where all the feedback can be collected and all the assets can be uploaded. So there will be actually no miscommunication there because people can work on one platform. They can see each other's comments. They can like each other's comments. They can connect with each other. And here again, you can basically sit back and relax, do your other work while your stakeholders exactly know where they can leave feedback. And by having certain automations and certain notifications, you can make sure that your attention gets back to the review process once everyone has finished their review. And this can all happen while you do other stuff, the actual work as a marketer that you got hired for. Tip number 4, and this is something I need to mention, is the same as the problem that still 9 out of 10 companies don't have a proper process in place for reviews. A lot of companies don't have a proper naming convention for their files, neither internally nor externally. So they are basically relying on what they got from an external partner. Have you ever been in the situation that you had like a latest version that is called final version 9 final, right? This little detail can cause a lot of confusion, especially in bigger teams where you have multiple stakeholders. There's nothing worse than knowing I've just submitted my review on a file that was not the latest version. Again, we're talking about motivation at work and administrative tasks, and this is just stuff that can be avoided. Version control. That's the big name here. Version control begins at the creator side, but it continues on the reviewer side. So you, as a creator, you can be the most structured person in the room. If you don't give a clear chance for the opposite to only review the latest version, you probably get the problem that they might look at something that was already reviewed before. It is still, as I said, surprising how many companies do not have a proper naming convention. So what you can see on the slide here is an example of some of our customers that have started to implement a naming convention policy. So every file that gets created has a proper naming convention. In this case, it's having a brand name, the month, the year, the actual campaign title and the version. It's short, it's easy to understand, and something that can be implemented immediately after this webinar for you as well. One last pro tip I would like to give when it's about file sharing. So when you have actually a version that needs to be shared, don't use tools where the link can expire. You probably know that there was a latest version, somebody hadn't the time to look yesterday, the link expired, and you need to do the work again. Let's have a look at the last tip for today, which is probably one of the most important ones. It is about being clear on next steps and deadlines with your reviewers. As I said, in terms of the efficient workflows, one important thing that keeps your workflow efficient is having everyone in the team aligned on the next steps and deadlines. This is important. When you use a workflow with different stakeholders, for example, you probably have one point of contact in each department. Use this point of contact and align with him on when do you need feedback from everyone in the room, and having a common agreement on where you receive this feedback. What this does is it helps you with accountability and will result in a higher engagement if you really speak to people and say, I need your feedback or your team's feedback until a specific deadline. Now, project timing and deadline management is a very crucial part where tools can be really, really helpful. What you can see on the screen are some dashboards from project management tools that you might already know. We are looking at Asana, we are looking at Monday.com, and we are probably also looking at Filestage, because these tools can really help you to set deadlines, to get reminded, and follow up on the process for everyone. All right. Now, everyone, after you have seen the biggest challenges surrounding marketing campaigns and where the root cause is, and the tips I have given you now that you can immediately after this webinar start using to speed up your campaign process, I would like to give you some examples and get more visual on how our customers have solved their review pains and streamlined their campaigns. What I would like to do now is showing you 3 examples from different use cases. I will explain the use cases in a nutshell and then dive with you into our platform and show you in the dashboard how they manage their campaigns right now. Starting with the first use case here, and just mention now for the following, even though I don't name brand names, those are real life examples from existing companies, big brands as well as small businesses, as mentioned in the beginning, to really help them with streamlining the content. All right, let's have a look at the first option here, this use case in a nutshell. The brand, in this case using Filestage, has a global marketing campaign that needs to be produced as a master file. The master file needs to get approved by the internal marketing manager first, then needs to be checked by the legal team, and in terms of time management in parallel with the head of marketing, because the feedback from legal and marketing is different, but they can do it at the same time because they comment on different sections on the file. Now, once the asset has moved through all these stages, the asset will be approved by the C-level management, and then once we have an approved master file, they can start working on localization their content for different different marketing channels as well as other channels. All right. So what you can see here is a board style of a workflow. Remember in the tips section, I said that it is good to have like the stakeholders in a Kanban style. So you not only see the stakeholders, but you also have an idea about the workflow. Now, what happens here in the first step is that in the first step, we have the marketer exchanging information with their external partner, for example, an advertising agency. They are sharing briefings, they're getting feedback on the briefing, they are aligning on the briefing, and then based on that, they get immediately files to review into their project environment as well. This can have multiple iterations, you know it, but once the marketing manager is fine with it, in the dashboard itself, he can just move the file over to the head of marketing and to the legal department, set due dates to make sure they actually give feedback in time. Now, once this is done, the file moves on to the other stakeholders. What you can see in front of you right now is one central place where you have all the assets and feedback shared and visible for everyone, so you can discuss it with full context. Having such a process in place here really helps to focus you on other tasks while the process is automatically starting. Again, here, this is a visual proof on how you can stay on top of everything, be proactive instead of reactive, while you can still use your time being productive in your everyday life. This is a high level, right? Now let's go a bit into the details now. Once the feedback finally arrives. So imagine you are opening a campaign asset, and then the stakeholders start to give feedback on this asset. You probably get notified, because as soon as somebody leaves a comment or requests changes or approves something, you get notified. So you can jump back into the project and you can align on the feedback. You can internally discuss what would you like to change, and then give this feedback back to your external partner, consolidated on what needs to be done. The result here will be that you will have higher quality content, because there is less versions needed to create a good campaign. So you have more time for the actual discussion of the creative content. And by having less versions, you will spend less time from the production till the approval in the end. Also, having the feedback visible in front of you will help you with no room for miscommunication, and potential stakeholders are not getting missed. So you're not having the problem that at the end of the project, you're getting slide tackled before you actually can publish the content. Okay, that's a global marketing campaign, all right? So imagine like a big brand managing multiple areas of a product, having a lot of stakeholders that needs to review. This as an example for you. The next use case is something that I wanted to share, because it is sometimes, as well as the process overall, misunderstood in terms of the importance it has. So when we look at the next workflow option, it's an artwork campaign approval. What do I mean with artworks? Imagine you have a product, and this product needs to get a package. Some people call it artwork, some people call it packaging design, but a lot of companies have the challenge that not only the campaign needs to be approved, but all these packages that will be, for example, sold in a store, they will have a packaging design. And the review of a packaging design is as important as the campaign itself. Let's have a look at the use case here, what you can see in front of you. In a nutshell, the brand in this case using Filestage has a rework to do of a packaging design. Needs to be changed. Imagine we are in the food and beverage industry, and I have the change request that some ingredients of my product have changed, right? So what this means is I need to create a new version. There's probably a new briefing with a new declaration, and the artwork needs to get approved first by the marketing manager, then needs to be checked by the responsible brand manager. They both working usually pretty close together with each other. And once the creative part is done, marketing and brand has reviewed, the complete artwork needs to go through legal and regulatory check before it, in the end, in this case, can be sent to the print supplier, who will usually send something like a soft proof, like a print proof of confirmation that yes, this can be printed. As you can see here as well in this example, as soon as you have multiple stakeholders involved in this process, it is absolutely mandatory to have a clear understanding who is involved in which stage and what's the responsibility for this person. If you are not organized in managing the stakeholders, your time will be eaten up by managing the stakeholders and their feedback manually. And here again, you have the chance to come into a proactive situation where you say, this is my workflow. You are the people that needs to give feedback, and I need your feedback until this date. Here's my external partner. So you can really align on these feedback in a visual manner. This will definitely boost productivity. The last example for today is for a small business that usually has the use case of being like a creative agency, a marketing agency, sometimes even a freelancer. The challenge is here on an everyday life, you need to handle multiple clients and multiple projects at the same times, right? To keep your business running. Of course, you have multiple clients that you need to serve with campaigns. Here's the thing. For a creative agency, for example, the creativity and quality is the highest good you have to make sure that every piece of content that is basically leaving your house has the highest level of quality that you can be proud of. So something that leaves your house needs to have a quality check before your client sees it, because your reputation and your probably word of mouth to get new customers stands and falls with the creativity and quality that you produce. Now, therefore, it is important that you allow your internal creative teams to align on feedback and on assets. So it's not only for communicating with your external partners, right? You also need to have a way to internally align on feedback, whether it's you're sitting together in a conference room, but as you know, nowadays with the new way of work, you are also working remotely or in a hybrid way. So it's not always possible even internally to align on feedback. Give your stakeholders the possibility internally to align creative team, head of design, account manager before the content actually goes to the client. As you can see here, stakeholder management is not only for enterprises alone, it's also for smaller businesses and a crucial part that drives your company reputation and growth. Short break, everyone. So far, you have learned about the challenges. You have learned about tips and tricks that you can use to overcome these challenges and make yourself more productive. Also, you have seen some review and approval workflow examples that customers use now for big brands as well as small businesses. From here, I would like to quickly dive with you into some, really like a checklist that helps you when to find out when the right time is for using a review and approval solution. What I don't want to do right now is going through this with you in detail. I will hand out this checklist for you if you're interested after this webinar. Put it in front of you. And if you have done the thought process in the beginning of thinking about a last project where you probably felt a challenge, use this project with the learnings from this webinar and go through this checklist to see where you see a fit for getting help by a tool with, for example, stakeholder management, chasing people for feedback, or the overall alignment of where currently my project is. And then you will be able to make a decision if you have the right tools already in place and you just need to be a bit more efficient on how to use them, or you can invest into a solution and really make a calculation on the return on investment, what such a tool will bring in a license and what you will be able to get out of it in return. All right, everyone. For the last 35 minutes, I would like to really thank you for your attention. In terms of moving forward now, if you are hyped about finally you found some really good tips that you can use on your everyday life now, before you start, I would also like to encourage you to start your free trial with Filestage today and secure yourself a little surprise. If you you after this webinar, you will also receive an email where you can continue the collaboration or looking more deeper into review and approval workflow. Just go to the website. You can also just book like a one-on-one consultation. It's completely free with my colleagues and me to really help you streamlining your content on your next projects. I would really like to thank you for your attention. Hopefully we see each other soon, and goodbye.